Hey, I'm Jeanette Pincus, and I have the honor of getting to do oral history for Minette, Rose, Klein. And today is Thursday, March 21st, 2024. Minette, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this for us.
You're quite welcome.
To begin with, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your family background, parents, grandparents, anything that you'd like to share.
Well, how about when I was born at Augustine Avenue, Florence Nightingale. They took me to Pearl Street when I came home. I don't remember the address, but it was Pearl Street where the market is now. And we lived there till I was 4 or 5 years old. My parents were Celia and Max Ute. Can we go further?
Yes.
All right. When I was either 4 or 5, we decided to move to South Dallas, further down on Forest Avenue, the old Forest Avenue, which that was about 5 years when I was 5. When I was 6, they enrolled me in Colonial Hill grade school, and I went there through 7th grade. 8th grade, went to Forest Avenue High School for 2 years. Then they decided to move to East Dallas. So I went to Woodrow for 2 years, Woodrow Wilson High School.
So what years were that?
Would be probably, I was born in 1932, so 5
Okay.
from that makes it 38. I probably went in to Colonial, went there for 7 years, so
Okay, that's
38.
okay.
You can do the math.
Oh, right.
I think I graduated from Woodrow 1950, possibly. I married Alvin Stanley Rose in July of 1950, and that's when we married. And then I began my adult life.
Okay. When growing up, younger years, any siblings, cousins, what was life like?
Oh, we had a big, big family. We celebrated Hanukkah on Christmas Day because the family a lot of them were in retail business. And at that time, my father was called Max Jewelry Store, but it was really a pawn shop with the 3 balls, that was on Elm Street. He always said he was not on Deep Elm because he was on the other side of Preston Road. And if you don't know, Preston Road went all the way to Elm Street at that time. Okay. And that was where the Central Expressway is today. So our childhood, we all gave everybody a gift. I never had to buy socks because we all had handkerchiefs, and at that time everyone had handkerchiefs. The tissues, which is everyone calls Kleenex, which is a name brand. So it's everyone got handkerchiefs and socks, and we celebrated. And there was only one grandparent in the whole family, which was not on the Ute side. It was the Kaplan side of my family. But everyone called him Zadie because he was the only one. So that's all they knew was that was their Zadie, even if it wasn't by blood. And that was one of the things we all did. There were, of my close age, the closest ones was Eileen and Malcolm Schwartz. Their mother and my father were brother and sister. At another time, maybe I'll give you the history of the Ute family, which is a whole interview all by itself.
So as a child, were you all members of a synagogue or a temple?
We're members of Temple Emmanuel. My father and mother were, I used to say they were the outcasts of Shereth Israel. he and my aunt and uncle, Lena and Aaron Schwartz, decided they wanted to go to Temple and not Sheriff Israel, which most of the Ute family and some of the other families were at Sheriff Israel. But, so we went to Temple Emmanuel, which was, I called it across the street. It was about a block away from our Forest Avenue house when it was on South Boulevard and Harwood.
Going back a little bit, when we're talking about, there was one grandparent. Was he American born or was he?
No,
American?
he was born in Russia and came to this country probably in the 1900s. My mother was 3 years old when she came to this country. My father was born here in, he says he was born in Marshall, Texas, but the rest of his family says no, he was born in Dallas, but I'm not sure where he was born. There's no birth certificate.
That's interesting, isn't it? The neighborhood that you were in, I know you moved, it sounded like you were moving more to where all the Jews were living.
Well, there were a lot that lived there at Pearl Street. There was a Schwartz family on down the street and an Engelberg family across the street. And then there was Mrs. Huberman who lived, and she was able, because of her, I was able to walk to the hardware store that an uncle of mine had on Harwood.
And what was your uncle's name?
Joe Oxman.
Joe Oxman. Okay.
Joe Oxman. But Mrs. Huberman, my mother would call. I never knew this for a long time. I thought I was doing it all by myself. She would call Mrs. Huberman and say that Minette is on her way. And she would come to the front porch with white raisins and give me some. And then she would call my Uncle Joe, who had the hardware store across the street on Harwood. He would come out of his store and watch me cross the street. So that's how I walked all by myself at 4 years old to the hardware store.
That's a great story.
But it was because of Mrs. Huberman.
Well, as a child, what did you do for amusement? What was fun? What were you allowed to do, and what was around?
Of course, we played jacks, and we played the game with the hidden rock in the hand, and you may climb the step, and hopscotch. And of course, the card game was Battle, or Go Fish, the standard games. I think as I got older, I learned how to play Chinese checkers.
As you got older too, like in high school, did you take up any extra activities?
Was busy with a lot of things. Was in the Spanish club, was in, several of the clubs there. But, I believe I was in the historical club too, or the history, don't remember the full name of it. And, volleyball. Sports was volleyball, of course, and then we played in the gym, we played that, and then we played baseball outside. Don't remember any other things.
As a teenager, was there Jewish youth groups that you got to be involved in?
There was the Young Judea. Don't believe that there was any B'nai B'rith women, any other that I was a member of Young Judea. I don't believe that Temple had their youth group yet. Yes, we did. And it was Mrs. Fox that was our chapter guardian or whatever she would be called. B. Fox was her name. That was from Temple. And then there was the Young Judea where I met the upper class girls from Highland Park. They came to South Dallas for that meeting. It was at the Aguda Sockham, which was on Forest Avenue at that time. Well, behind that was the building called the was the recreation where you could dance there on Saturday night, which my older sister did a lot.
What was her name? Your
Her name
sister's?
was Ray. She liked the name of Rachel, but she had the name of Ray. Her name was Ray Ute, and then she married Herman Goldfaden from Detroit. Then he passed away, and she married Martin Adams. And she was married to him until he passed away. She passed away in 2017. She had 2 children, Selene and Harold. And that was my only sibling. We were 4.5 years apart. Now back to my teenage years, or young teenage years. My first date was Carl Skybell. I don't think he's living today, but his cousin used to come all the way from Greenville, Texas, to go to Temple, and his name was Marvin. What would that say?
Skybell.
Skybell. And let's see what else was there in my growing up years. In my school, I did do the halls. I worked in the office a lot, but I always asked for the lunchtime so that I could visit all 4 lunch breaks and visit with my cousins and friends who were in different classes.
That's fun. You were like in the so-called Jewish neighborhood at that time. Did you have felt any anti-Semitism at all?
Oh, yes. I had one incident. I had never known about any, but I had a playmate that lived down the street, and one day she said, "We can't be together or play anymore." And I said, "Well, why?" She said, "My father says because you're a Jew." So I said, "That's terrible." I said, "I want to go talk to him." So we did, and I went there and I asked him point blank, "Why can't I play with your daughter?" And he said, "Because the Jews killed Jesus." And I said, "Well, some Jews may have, but it wasn't the Jews of today." So we sat for about 30 minutes. Then he said, "You taught me a lot." And he invited me to decorate their Christmas tree. That was my one and only experience with anti-Semitism.
Well, that's a very special story. Because you educated someone and sat down and talked to them.
We were like 10 years old.
Yeah.
I had never known that a Jew was not disliked by people. I'd never heard of it. What else?
Let's see. You mentioned when you got married, so we're going to go back a little bit. You got married in 1950. Where did you all live then?
I lived in East Dallas, 726 Ridgeway. It was just off Gaston Avenue. And my parents had both had heart attacks. And I settled for us not such a big wedding. We didn't have the big dinners, and it was in the Temple in South Dallas.
Now, how old were you when you got married?
18.
Yeah, right out of high school.
I did not go to college. I told my parents it would be a waste of money. I had already met Alvin. We had been going steady since I was 16. And we met through 2 cousins that got married.
Who were they?
Ray Bell Can and Wilfred Goldgar. The Goldgar family was a big family at that time here. I don't think any of the children settled here. But that's how we met when I was 13 years old. And his mother didn't drive, but he would drive her to play poker with my family. And so he would come and spend the evening with me in the back part of the house while they played poker. So we had been friends since I was 13 or 14, and that's how we grew up, knowing one another. And he met my other cousin, Malcolm, they became close friends through my friendship with Alvin. And,
So,
so we had not a small wedding. We invited everybody, but only had cake and punch. So it was down in the old Malvinson Hall of Temple Emmanuel in South Dallas.
so you've been members of Temple Emmanuel your whole life.
Since I was probably 4 years old.
Yeah.
My parents were members, and there was another thing I do want to let you know about some of the synagogues. When he came back from the service and we were ready to join a synagogue, I said, oh, well, all right, I'll go back, I'll concede and go to Shirth Israel, because his family were members of Shirth Israel. So I went to the proper person, and they said, at that time we couldn't afford the standard membership fee. So I told him that, and he said, well, just go, don't become members, and just go to the auxiliary for our services. Well, I didn't really like that because I wanted to be a member. So I went to Temple, almost in tears, and said, we want to join Temple. And so I told him the same story. And he handed me a piece of paper, and he said, can you fall into any of these categories? Well, of course, the bottom one was, yes, we can afford that. And he says, okay, fill out this form and you'll be a member. So that's how we became members of Temple and not the other synagogue.
And you never forgot it, and you supported Temple Emmanuel
That's correct.
all this time.
I went to work for Shirth Israel, though. I took their money.
What'd you do for them?
I was their building director.
Okay. How long did you do that?
About 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
It was right after, when Alvin passed away, he was 51 years old. Bernard Levy, I believe, was president or going to be or had been. And he said, I think we have, he said, you're going to want to work. He said, and I think I have the perfect job for you. So about 2 weeks later, I went in, and that's when I became the building director of Shirth Israel, which was probably an 18-hour-a-week job, a day job. I opened the building, I closed the building. I was responsible for the maintenance and the cleanup and the meetings and the weddings, and that's what the building director at that time did. It was a big job, wasn't it, children? That's where I got my speeding tickets.
You mentioned that that's when you were working as a building supervisor, but I know you've done a lot of things over there, so.
A busy life.
Yes, you have, so if you could share some of that.
Well, let's see. Where did we leave off? With Alvin passing away, or with Alvin being,
Well, tell me, I guess we could.
I was a campfire girl leader.
Okay, so maybe we should start tell me about your children, because I guess chronologically that'll show when you started getting involved in things.
Celia was, when I married in 50, Alvin went to the service. His father had a heart attack, and not a heart attack, a brain tumor. Anyway, they called him, and he was sent back from Japan in the service, and then he got an early discharge because of that. And then he came home, and I had been working at Neiman Marcus for I worked there for, I think, 5 years while he was in the service, came home. I'm trying to remember if I think he had already come home. But I was with Neiman's for about 50 to 55, about 5 years. And during that time, in 53, we bought our first house. And there's another incident that at that time, they wouldn't accept a woman's salary as to buy a house. So I was upset, and I told my boss, who was a woman boss, and she got angry, and she says, how much do you need to make the down payment? We were $500 short. And I told her, and she said, here's your check for $500. You'll pay me whatever you can when you can. And that's how we got our first house.
That's lovely.
And that's where Celia was born in 1955. And so I worked there, and I paid my boss back all but about maybe $100 or so. And then when I had the baby, I worked until about 2 weeks. I worked some from home, took the books home. I was her secretary and office. At that time, there were no computers. Every sale had to be physically posted in a book. So that's what I was responsible for, and for her dictations. And a woman boss knows how hard a woman can work. I took dictation from her probably maybe from 8 in the morning till maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So she was a very good boss, but she knew how hard I could work. And where else were we? In 55, Celia was born, and we had a pinion of Ben, which is for the first child. You can't have a bris if it's a girl. So my uncle lived with us almost. I had 2 fathers. We'll back up to when a bachelor uncle moved from California back to Dallas and started living with us with my grandfather. That was during the war.
So on what side of the family is this? It was
on my mother's side, the Kaplan side.
Was it
of
so
the
your
family.
mother's brother?
Brother was a Tom Kaplan. And then he spoiled my children so that I didn't ever give them an allowance. There was always money on their dresser when they wanted something. And so that's how he sort of insisted that an opinion of Ben, I never had even heard of it. And that's when a baby girl is born, the first child in the family. So that's what Celia had. And that was in 55. So then and then in 1960, Mindy was born. Then, where are we going? I had the two children from 60, and then Mindy was born, and in Celia's growing up days, she wanted to be a campfire girl, so they needed the leader, so I said, okay, I'll become the campfire. And that's what they did. And we had moved to Royal Lane by then. In 1961, I believe. We lived in Casa View at that first little house for 10 years. Then moved to Royal Lane, 4074 Royal Lane. And Celia went to Walnut Hill School. What else? So then she went to Cary Junior High and Thomas Jefferson. And those were my growing up years too. I learned how to camp outside. And you don't camp in the spring, you camp in the fall, because that's when the snakes go to hibernate. Then through their growing up years.
You were involved in a lot of their
involved
activities.
in there and involved with Temple. And we called it Yenamsville because all the Jews mostly lived in the ghetto, which we called the ghetto. And we lived just west of Midway Road.
Mhm.
But there were people to carpool with.
You mentioned
The
Temple
Temple.
Emmanuel. It sounds like you were very active with them. Was there other organizations you were too?
I was very active in B'nai B'rith Women that became Jewish Women International. That's where I met you.
Mhm.
We would go on conventions, and you would go with your family,
Mhm.
and I would go with my two daughters.
Mhm.
I was president of the Bluebonnet chapter of B'nai B'rith Women. Then I was active in the Temple Emmanuel Sisterhood. For about 35 years, I was the Friday Oneg chairperson, responsible for the Onegs. And that's when we had the big Onegs on Friday night with punch and cake and the big flower arrangements. And I had a very good committee, and we all worked very well together. And that was in the sisterhood. It was sponsored by Sisterhood and Brotherhood. And through all the years, I started a catering business when Alvin passed away at 51, and the girls and I decided that I would need to work. So that's when I was working for Sheriff Israel during those years. But I also started a catering. We were trying to decide on what the name would be because I was already making stuff for the different caterers that they said they made but I would make them. Then that was called Diversity.
Okay.
Because when I did some bookkeeping for some salesmen that I kept their books and paid their bills. Then I met with them usually once a week when we'd go over. I'd write the checks and have them sign them and take care of their books. I don't remember their names.
That's okay. You've done a lot of things.
Where was I then? That's how I got so busy with my catering. I decided that that's when I would start catering. My first catering job was for Barbara and Ed Thorman's, one of their anniversaries. She had said, would I do that? So I catered that. And from there I started, my name got bandied around, and I picked up business here and there. And I gave that up when my second husband, Gabriel Klein, got sick. So in 2016, I retired the business of Diversity.
How long were you married?
I was married from 1950 to 1980. Then I met Gabriel while I was working at Sheriff Israel. That's a cute story. I was there for the Friday night receptions, and my daughter Mindy was having car trouble, and she called and said she wanted to use my car. Could I get a ride home? And I said, sure, there's always somebody at the Oneg that would drive me home. So she picked my car up, and I went to someone that lived near me, fairly near me, and said that he could drive me home. But then during the reception, he came to me and said his car was full of samples. It was Coble. I don't remember his first name. It was Hilda Coble's brother. And he said that his car was full of samples, but there was someone that only lived a couple of blocks away that was here at the Oneg. So he introduced me to Gabriel Klein. And Gabriel took me home, and he was there around for every day of the rest of my life till he passed away in 2017. I guess he liked my suit that I made.
That's a very sweet story. You mentioned your daughters. I'd like to talk more about your family, your grandchildren. Make sure we mention their names.
Okay. Well, Celia was the first one to give me my first grandchild. That's Todd Robert Rovner. She was married to Ivan Rovner. I don't remember what day they married or what year. But then Mindy met Mike Halstead, and they married a few years after that. And she had 2 children. That's Haley and Max Halstead. Max now lives in New Jersey, next to Pittsburgh. If you can understand, a 15-minute ride from his home in New Jersey to his office in somewhere in Pennsylvania was his office. So it's just across the border from work to home. Then Haley is going to give me my 4th great-grandchild, supposedly on April 21st, but she's going to be a week early. So that leaves, I have Adam Rovner and Talia Rovner, and then I have Willa, who is Max and Caddy's first child. And she's the sweetest little thing. And that's up to the current.
Okay, so we've named
of
all
my
grandchildren.
life. I have now 3 great-grandchildren and a 4th along on the way.
Okay, now did we name all of Celia's children?
Celia had more children after Todd. She married Bob Mullins for a while. She had 2 children with Bob, Robert, and then there was Michael Carl. So Celia has 3 boys. They are all married to wonderful, wonderful children. I am so very lucky that I have all of them. I have no complaints. They're all great. I'm very lucky and blessed that all of our families get along with one another. We're all very happy. And now, all but Todd lives in my city.
That's a blessing.
Great.
Yeah, it is. In concluding, is there anything you'd like to share for the grandchildren, your children, great-grandchildren, values that you feel that you had that were passed down to you that you want to be passed down to them? So I'm sure you've been giving them examples your whole life of what has been important to you.
Just to keep on living the way we are. Communication. I was told when I first married by some very intelligent, there's the 3 C's, and now sometimes I have trouble remembering. Communication, whatever they all are. It's just to don't lose contact. If you're having a problem, get it settled quick and don't let it fester.
Thank you so much
You're quite welcome.
for sharing your story with us. We appreciate it. You know what? There's one more thing that's important to us being with the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. You're one of our founders, and I can't...
That's right. I forgot all about that. I got a call from Bob Beer one day and said that he's trying to get together a group of people. And it was he and his wife, Jerry and Bob Beer. I'm trying to think of who else was there, but we gathered $10, we gathered some money together and started our first publications and of getting more people and letting them know that we had organized. And it was gonna be called the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. And Bob gave me a $10 bill to start it, and he signed it. And I gave that money to someone recently. I kept it all these years, and we all, I don't know how many of us signed that. I think it was $10 or $11 or $12. We signed those bills. So I went ahead and used my money. That was reimbursement because I did the mailings. And I'm trying to think of who else was in that room. It was a lady, because I drove her home. She lived just off Hillcrest, south of Royal, on one of those little streets. Helen, or I just don't remember their names.
Well, we appreciate that you really helped start that, because now we're like
Yes.
52, 3 years old. And it's such an honor for me, now being president of Dallas Jewish Historical Society, that we get to, after all this time, that I get to interview you. And thank you so
You're
much for
quite
doing
welcome.
it, because the organization is
And I
wonderful.
hope you frame that money.
We
I don't know
have.
if it's in
Yes.
existence or it got spent now, but I kept it all these years to give it to the
Well,
right
it's
person.
very special, so thank
It
you.
was special to me.
Thank you very
You're
much for
quite
that.
welcome. Done.